The majority of unions in the Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council are calling for the Department of Public Service and Administration to come back to the council on March 17th with an improved offer. They say any further delay of the negotiations would affect the entire public service. For more on this, we're joined now by Reifdah Ajam, the General Secretary of Federation of South Africa. Reifdah, good to have you once again. Thank you very much for your time. We hear from Cabinet's briefing that a number of unions have already signed the offer, yet you're saying that this offer must go back and be renegotiated. On what grounds are you saying this, and how can this offer be bettered?
Well, first and foremostly, good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. We want to set the record straight here because we are totally disheartened, and we feel that it's totally disingenuous for a deliberate misrepresentation of the facts to be communicated not only in the media but on various platforms. Most importantly, the one that has been communicated via the minister in the presidency, where we are seeing that there is a deliberate distortion of the facts on hand meant to credit those who had initially boycotted the negotiations. So from our side, it is absolutely disingenuous.
So is this a matter about yourself getting credit for having crafted the deal because other unions left the bargaining table, or is this about the details of the offer itself?
This is most certainly about the details, and I want to once again re-emphasize that we are mandate takers when we take processes of negotiations forward. We have been given the clearest indication to focus on the 2023-2024 negotiations as instructed by our members and not to rehash the old processes of the dispute. And this is essentially where everything emanates from. It is not pleasing, and it is absolutely doing a disservice at the highest levels to those who are outside of the bargaining chamber, who chose to do so voluntarily, who had walked out of the chamber, are communicating, and it is a total fabrication and a distortion of the facts at hand. So ultimately, it is about not just setting the record straight, but maintaining the process legitimately and in a process of good faith within the chamber, considering that we currently do hold the majority.
Right. So I'm going to stay on this again a little bit, because this is what the minister in the presidency says. She says on the question of which services won't be disrupted, you are aware that Nehawu was on strike. This is in reference to the shutdown. There was a threat of strike by Pop Crew and SAPU, and I just announced that Nehawu's strike has been called off. They signed yesterday. Today, they are back at work. SAPU has signed today, and we are waiting for Pop Crew to sign, but they had committed that they will be signing. And those are the organizations that the minister says has signed. Are those the only organizations who have signed?
Once again, unfortunately, we have to rectify the facts on hand to the general public out there, and in particular to the media. This statement by the minister had come out as part of the cabinet statement, and it had not taken into account the progressions that have been made subsequently in the chamber. I want to re-emphasize that we have no knowledge of an agreement that was signed neither by Pop Crew nor by Nehawu. The two parties that we are referring to in this instance are the parties who voluntarily and willingly chose to abandon the negotiations. Those who are currently within the chamber, the majority of those unions that comprise of the Fedusa public sector unions, i.e. HOSPERSA, NAPTOSA, PSA and SAOU, alongside the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU. That is the majority, the 53.9% that we refer to, and we have continued with the negotiations. We have continue to focus on the mandate, and we have not abandoned the process, nor did we continue with the strike action. So I simply do not understand where the minister has found those facts from, and the matter has been rectified by way of further reporting on other platforms and other media within other media houses to say that the statement that was communicated was factually incorrect. The unions that are party to the negotiations and have continued to soldier through are the ones that I have referred to now that comprise the majority of 53.9%. Neither Nehawu nor POPCRU are part of the processes, and it is simply a pure distortion of the facts.
Yeah. But was an agreement tabled then, is it yesterday or at least on the 14th of March?
There was no agreement. We are currently busy with negotiations. Demands have been tabled, and if you had focused on the statement that was jointly issued by the Fedusa unions and SATU, you would have noted that we have rejected the issue, or we had rejected the offer that had been tabled by the employer, and we had called for the DPSA to return to the bargaining council tomorrow, the 17th of March, with an improved offer, with the intent of trying to move the process forward and not to destabilize nor to retract the process in any such way.
So if we move away from the cabinet statement, we look at the DENOSA statement. They're saying as a public sector trade union that is admitted to the Public Service Bargaining Council, DENOSA, SAMATU, SIAPU, and PAUSA, which had boycotted the 2023-2024 wage negotiations, while the 2022-2023 negotiations had not been concluded, finally reached an agreement with the employer to include the outstanding 2022-2023 negotiation issues into 2023-2024 talks. The agreement between the parties was finalized and signed on the 14th of March 2023 as part of the facilitation process that was facilitated by the PSCBC.
Well, if you go back to the legitimacy of the very institution where collective bargaining resides, the PSCBC, you will find no knowledge nor record of an agreement that they are referring to, because in essence, once again, the misguided focus is on previous elements from last year's negotiations. We are focusing on the aspects of the 2023-2024 current round of negotiations. And once again, I emphasize, and I hope that people are able to reflect, to accept that we are providing factual information on these platforms, that we are not being sidetracked by last year's demands. We are focusing on the issues at hand for this year, 2023-2024, and we are hoping that tomorrow, the 17th of March, government will come back with a revised offer after the offer of today was rejected.
So you are not talking the 2022-2023 disputes. You are now looking ahead to the 2023-2024 negotiations. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. On conclusion of the process last year, the majority continued to move forward on the matter.
Yeah. But it seems, it seems though, Reifdah, government has gone back and they've made some concessions that, for example, the unilateral implementation of the 3% was not correct. And in order to cease the hostilities, they've made that agreement. And I've got the agreement signed here from the PSCBC on the 14th of March by Nehawu, POPCRU, DENOSA, SAPU, and other OBO members. It's about that 2022-2023 dispute, which SATU had accepted the 3%.
Well, my dear fellow professional, Tabo, I want to re-emphasize that the unions that you are quoting now that are legitimate organs of the PSCBC did not form the majority. We are now once again emphasizing the focus on the current round of negotiations and not the dispute that emanated from 2022-2023. It is not correct to be misleading the public when we know for a fact that many of those unions that you are quoting are not just essential services personnel, but they had formed the minority grouping in terms of this process. I'm not sure how else I'm able to explain or outline that particular process.
I just want to understand that.
Because the focus is on negotiations for this year. When you are looking at the unilateral implementation, that is a process that you have to go and speak to the employer about. It is not unique. It was not a precedent-setting process. It is something that can be executed considering the fact that there was majority consensus. The Fedusa caucus alongside SATU had comprised that majority. If you look at pure and basic mathematics to which our members conform as teachers, they will give you the clearest indication that 50% is what is the middle ground, and beyond that point you will have a majority, albeit a slim process, but a majority nonetheless.
Yeah.
The focus is on the current round of negotiations and not the dispute.
I fully understand. I get you there, but I'm just worried because that means, are you saying that the augmentation of the 2022-2023 increment is not applicable? I know that's not what you're negotiating now because you've already moved past that point. But this particular agreement that I've got before me takes us back to that particular financial year. And they are talking here, parties acknowledge that the percentage offered as an increase on the baseline of employees and the subsequent unilateral implementation of the last offer by the employer in the 2022-2023 round of negotiations gave rise to the current dispute. And parties agree that trade unions will have a right to table proposed additions to the Special Council Schedule 14 March as to address the concerns. The employer commits that residual and subsistent matters emanating from the 2022-2023 wage dispute related to COLA shall be tabled, positively dealt with, and concluded as part of the 2023-2024 wage negotiations. Are you saying that augmentation is not applicable?
Well, you know, if government has somehow miraculously found additional funds in the fiscus, we are not going to argue in any such way. It can only benefit members. But once again, if there is any move or if there was any renewed aspects that have come into this process by parties who have abandoned it initially, then most certainly they have the right to table such. We then want to assume that they have abandoned the dispute that they had implemented and exercised their democratic right to do so. But for now, it is a matter of them wanting to table. All we are focused on is the demands that our negotiators have tabled in chamber. We have come down from our offer, our initial demand of 10% to 8% currently. We have showed the employer the hand of the 7% that was on the table, and we are hoping that by tomorrow, as undertaken and outlined in our media statement, that government would come back with a revised offer. We most certainly cannot speak about the legitimacy of what you are outlining now. Intervention of whatever other nature, I cannot place an assumption on, but all we say is that for us to focus on legitimate conclusions, to focus on legitimate advancements here is within the PSCBC, and if the majority unions have not had sight of that, then we certainly cannot speak about it. But we don't know about any agreement that the minister refers to or otherwise. For now, the focus is on those who are in chamber and not those who are making undue demands and advancing a process of a dispute outside of the legitimacy and legality of the chamber.
Reifdah, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much for coming on tonight and bringing that clarity for us. Reifdah Ajam, General Secretary of the Federation of Unions of South Africa.